that yes, this is the right risk-taking moment, or how do you distinguish in your life itself, sir, that this risk is worth taking? Yeah.
How do you deal with the question risk on one side and is it worth doing on the other side? And in particular, in the case of Rosetta, there were things we had to accept. So we had to accept a very high level of risk beyond the level that the European Space Agency is normally ready to accept, simply because either we did accept that risk or we couldn't do the mission. In the case of Rosetta, there were things like this. For example, we had to hibernate the spacecraft for 2.5 years before getting to the comet. So switch it off, leave it alone for 2.5 years, because we were too far away from the sun, and the spacecraft was not receiving enough sun to produce sufficient electrical energy to stay active. This risk was evaluated to be, I don't remember the numbers now, but certainly was beyond the threshold that normally the European Space Agency would accept.
Hello everyone, welcome to Space Science Podcast Series 6. And today I am 𝒂𝒔𝒔𝒊𝒐𝒏 and I am on a mission to connect youths with space science, provide them a wider platform so that they can think out of the box, they can think what new possibilities are possible in space science. And yes, today we have a very, very special guest with us. He has spent his 36 years only in space science field, and he has not only that, he is the mission head operation of Rosetta mission. For those who don't know, Rosetta mission was the mission which actually placed the first satellite to orbit a comet. Not only that, it also landed a Philae lander on that particular comet. So it created a history, and today we have the particular man himself over here to tell us about what did actually happen behind this and how did it actually happen. He's also author of books, and he has mentored many people, taught and he's also a physicist. So we have a lot to speak today, sir. So let's welcome Dr. 𝒂𝒊𝒐𝒏 to this wonderful podcast, and let's see what we can extract from your knowledge, sir. So how do you feel to be on this podcast?
Yeah, I'm very happy. I like the mission that you described of your podcast, and I'm happy to support it.
Thank you so much, sir. So, as I said, 36 years of experience in particularly space domain, and as a operational head at European Space Agency, that is truly very incredible, sir. That clicks a question in my mind. Then how did it actually started? How did you felt like space is calling you and I have to go now? So how did it started and how did you took initiative towards that? So what was your whole journey?
Yeah, this started very early for me because I was a kid. I was a 9 years old kid when the first human beings landed on the moon, and of course that event has actually had a big influence on me, on actually on all kids of my generation. I'm sure that many people that follow the space career will tell you exactly this. That was the sparkle that started all. So I was passionate about space since I was 9 years old, 10 years old, and I followed that as an objective. Of course, I wanted to be an astronaut when I was a kid, but eventually I ended up working in space by following with determination my objective. Life doesn't necessarily help you. I mean, being an astronaut is very difficult anyway, and also the opportunities don't come every day. But if you use your tenacious perseverance, you can get there. So eventually, when I finished my study, I studied physics, and in fact, I wanted to do a thesis in the space field. But the only professor that was working in my university on space field, he had no time for me. So I had to choose a thesis in a different field. But of course, I didn't give up. And in the end, I found a job as astrophysicist, as a junior astrophysicist in the European Space Agency in 1984. And that's where I started. I started there. I was lucky to get in contact with the operations field because I was working in the scientific support of a flying spacecraft. It was called Exosat, an X-ray astronomy satellite. And I got immediately in contact with operations. And when you get infected by mission operations, then you don't leave it anymore. Yeah.
Yes. So that's such an incredible story to hear from you, sir. From your childhood itself, you have had this passion towards space science. So, as you said, you started on with the physicist, and you love astrophysics so much. So, was there any moment or hilarious moment in your life when you realized कि I am actually using physics in my personal life as well without knowing it? Like you are not knowing it, but you are using physics over there. So was there any moment like that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. A physicist uses physics in his life every day. One example I can give is that anything that happens around me, the first question for me is, where is energy? What is happening here? Where is it coming from? We know that energy is preserved. So where did it come from? Where does it end? And this applies to everything that happens around you. And it's an example that I quote also to my kids. To this is something that your mind, when you've been trained and educated as a physicist, never leaves your mind. And you find the answers. You actually find explanations in phenomena that go around you by just asking simple questions like that. What happened to energy in this phenomena? Where is it coming from? Where it ended up? And and this helps you understanding the world.
That's the first thing I heard, and I would like to implement in my life as well, to ask questions. And how is that happening? Because I am pursuing ECE, electronics and communication engineering. So I myself ask sometimes, how did this happen? And sometimes we do get a lot of answers, and then sometimes we don't even get it. So that's that goes on. So if I ask particularly the Rosetta mission, which was the game changer of in the space industry, and personally, I didn't even knew about this Rosetta mission before itself. So when I was reading about it, I was like, this is kind of science fiction. That's I cannot even imagine. At that time, if I was there, I would be like, is this even possible? So that time it was something which is impossible. But now it's possible, of course, sir. So how do you define impossible at current moment? How do you say this is impossible right now? Or is there anything impossible right now?
Well, I'm quoting some, I don't know exactly whom I'm quoting, but I heard this very, very often, that things are impossible until somebody does them. Yeah. And
Yes.
so that's that's the approach. And in fact, when we started, I think the word impossible was never in our minds. Yeah. We were given a task and we just yeah looked for ways to perform it, to actually achieving it. And but we realized that we did an analysis of what we needed when talking about now 1996. The mission had already been studied for years, had changed as well because the whole environment had changed, also international cooperation. And the trajectory had been defined, the comet had been selected, but then it became the moment where it had to be implemented. Implemented meant that industry had to build the probe and the lander, and we, on the operations side, had to think of a way of getting this thing to the comet and getting the science that it was supposed to be doing. And there we did an analysis of all the things that we needed to know and we needed to master in order to achieve this. And well, we categorized them in three groups. One was the group of the things our control center had already experienced, so we knew how to do them and we had the right experience. The second field was those things that we either had very limited experience or none at all, but someone else in the world had this. For example, our colleagues at NASA and JPL in Pasadena, California, they had flown in interplanetary space for decades before us. So we knew we didn't know how to do it, but we knew we could get, by cooperation with them, we could get to learn from them how they did it. And then there was a third part, and the third part is things that we had to do and nobody had done before. We had to learn, and nobody was there to teach us. And this is the category that if you start telling yourself, oh, that's impossible, then you never achieve anything. So we never used this word, and we said, okay, good, we have to achieve them. We have to reach the right level. We get to get the right tools, develop the right tools. But we have 15, 20 years in front of us. So let's make a plan, a development plan. Let's not start now implementing things now that we need in 15 years. Uh, wouldn't make sense. Let's wait for these, yeah. But the ones we need earlier, let's start earlier. So that's the way we approached it, in a sort of analytical way. And then when you analyze things, impossible is something that doesn't belong to the game. Yeah, there are the difficult things, the challenging ones, the ones you don't know, and the ones you have to learn about.
That's so good to hear from you, sir. I'm glad to hear this. So, if is there any mission at present time that you think can be done by you or the young scientist over here that is like kind of impossible, but that should be done?
Oh, yes, yes. Well, let's say one of my dreams is the missions that go and look for signs of life in the Jupiter and the Saturn systems. And to do it properly, really, what you would have to do is to dig through the icy crust of the Jupiter moons, or of the Saturn moons, like Enceladus, and go in the oceans now down underneath and search for biological material. Today, this is the closest thing to impossible that I could ever think. It's something that certainly today we are not able to do, but it is not by definition impossible. It's a matter of getting there step by step. So I don't think we'll get there very soon, because missions to Jupiter and Saturn are very expensive, very long. They don't happen every year. They happen every maybe 20 years. And therefore, I don't think we will need to perform many, many intermediate steps to get to the final point. It will take decades. Maybe I will not leave them in my life, but again, what today seems very science fiction is achievable. Only it's achievable if you get there with the right plan and the enough time and money.
That's so good, sir, to hear that that is particularly the impossible, and people are actually trying for it, and of course, we'll make it possible someday. So, if I talk about your leadership role at particularly ESA missions, and when we say ESA was a mission which was risk taking and worth of risk taking, so when you were given this mission and you were said to, just start on with it, how do you distinguish like that this risk should be taken in this risk is worth taking over there, because it's a long tenure, of course, and when you have to implement it everything, you have to put your entire life dedicated to that. So how did you distinguish that yes, this is the right risk taking moment, or how do you distinguish in your life itself, sir, that this risk is worth taking? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. Of course, we have a professional way to approach it, which is for every mission, this is true. We make a list of risks, we identify them all, we identify the category of the risk. So how likely is it to happen? Whether it would be catastrophic, so what is the impact, catastrophic or only damaging or only, say, financial risk? And we identify what we call mitigation measures, which is tasks you can perform to reduce this risk, maybe over time. So that's what we do professionally in operations. Is very important, and on a project that lasts 20, 30 years, it's very important also to update this regularly. So your risks in 1996 are not the same risks or in 2006 and not in 2016. So it's a continuous assessment, and you change. You change your assessment of the risk, you change the list of the risk, new ones come, old ones disappear, and you change the mitigation measure in particular. So that's what we do professionally. Now, you ask something very, very important, which is, well, how do you deal with the question risk on one side and is it worth doing on the other side? And in particular, in the case of Rosetta, there were things we had to accept. So we had to accept a very high level of risk beyond the level that the European Space Agency is normally ready to accept, uh, simply because either we did accept that risk or we couldn't do the mission. In the case of Rosetta, there were things like this. For example, we had to hibernate the spacecraft for 2.5 years before getting to the comet. So switch it off, leave it alone for 2.5 years, because we were too far away from the sun, and we were not the spacecraft was not receiving enough sun to produce sufficient electrical energy to stay active. This risk was evaluated to be, I don't remember the numbers now, but certainly was beyond the threshold that normally the European Space Agency would accept for a mission. Now, the question there was, okay, we've evaluated it, we have identified all the possible mitigation measures and so on. It still is beyond the threshold. What do we do? And there the decision was, well, we have to accept it. Otherwise, you don't do the omission. So that's, in a way, this is the decision point. If you're not ready to take higher risk, then you're not going to achieve anything in life if you want. So there are moments where, of course, live your life in a risk-controlled environment, but there are moments where you have to allow going above. Otherwise, probably life is not even worth living.
That's worth mentioning over here, that we have to take higher risk, higher the risk, higher the benefits. So, if this Rosetta mission, which took actually this 20 years, over these 20 years, as presently as a youth, I would say youth are like in a verge of like they want faster results. They want something that should be, if I do this now, only 1 year or something. But that time you all your team had 20 years of patience and that went through. So how did that particular every day look like over there at ESA mission? Because there was a time when I watched the video, in particular when it actually landed, and I can see the happiness on everyone's face. So how did that each day look like, and and at the end, how did everything changed?
Well, the 20 years, every day was different. And when you start a project like Rosetta and you know that it's going to end 20 years later, you don't know whether you will be on the project all the time. In fact, the majority of the people did not. I was privileged, if you want, to follow it. But even in my case, I was always dedicated with Rosetta. Well, I had always Rosetta under my responsibility, but my job changed. Initially, I was 100% of Rosetta, was responsible for that operation. Then I took a job where I was responsible for all the interplanetary missions of ESA, and Rosetta was one of them. And then I took a job in which I was responsible also for other areas, Earth observation and meteorological, you name it. But Rosetta was still part of it. So what I want to say is that it's very, well, almost never happens that somebody does the same job on the same project every for 20 years every day. So the majority of the people evolve. Maybe in my team, people left the team, came back, or made a progression in their career. If you watch that video at the landing, you will see there's a mixture of young people and people with gray hair like me, or with no hair, which is even worse. And you see that there are various generations of people that actually follow the project. Some of us for 20 years, some others for less. Some others were already retired at the time of arrival, and some had just joined. So eventually, for each one of us, that day was a completely different experience and feeling. Each one of us had a different history behind. But of course, whatever period you spend on a mission like this, on such a day, it's the culmination of all your efforts, whether you spent 1 year or 20 years, it's the same. That was, of course, for all of us, the same level of joy.
I can still see the joy on your face, sir. You are reminded of that past moment,
Yeah.
and that's so good to hear from you again. If for that, after that mission, how did your life change, sir? Because that was the mission when after that maybe you would have people started knowing you that this was the head of the mission of the for that particular mission. So how did that change your life?
Yeah, it did in two aspects. First of all, professional. Okay, I was lucky because I reached that point where I was only, well, let's say, uh, yeah, 6 years, 6, 7 years before the end of my career in ESA. So I had to survive only 6 or 7 years. So other people were younger, yeah, but all of us having gone through that project, which was unique, which was historical, which was very visible as well, on that very day, had the feeling, well, we're never going to top this in the rest of our career. We're never going to have another opportunity in our career, even the youngest, to do something which goes beyond what we've done with Rosetta. We're going to do interesting things. We're going to do different things, but Rosetta will remain the top of the career. Everybody felt like this. And as I said, for me it was easy because it was towards my age. It was my last part of the career. So I had many other troubles already and things to deal with, many missions, many financial issues and political issues. So it was easy for me to sort of say, okay, good, I've reached it, I'm happy, but now I have to move on with different things which are less satisfying, less exciting, but someone has to do it. For younger people, it was tougher. They spent years trying to recover from this sort of depression, if you want to call it. Yeah. So that was one aspect. The other aspect you mentioned, it was, if you want, popularity. Well, I was already before engaging in the very limited free time I had because I had a very busy work professional life. In the very limited free time, I was engaging in outreach and education but certainly, Rosetta changed this completely. So I'm still asked, like today, to talk about Rosetta. In November, I will make a presentation in the planetarium. They asked me to talk about Rosetta. So since then, I must have made speeches and interviews and program podcasts and programs. Um, I don't know, several hundreds, I would say. And this will never finish. I will always be associated to this mission. And actually, I'm very happy because this opened also that horizon to me. Probably now that I'm retired from ESA, I would not be so active if it wasn't for my popularity for Rosetta.
Okay, that's so good to hear that you are still connected with everything, and that's actually great that you are trying to spread your knowledge, and we are learning from you a lot, sir. So I am sure that you have in this tenure, you have people have asked you countless questions about this, about that. So was there any time that you felt ki why don't people ask me this question that you had in your mind, but people didn't ask you? So was there any question like that?
Oh, this is a difficult question. This is a very difficult one. No, there's been single occasions in which I was expecting a specific question. It's happened recently. Somebody interviewed me on Mars missions, and nobody asked me about life on Mars, which is certainly not my field. But I had prepared on that because recently there's a lot of talk about biosignatures and things like this. And so I was surprised by the fact that this question didn't come. And there's been similar occasions. But to identify one question that was never asked to me, no, that's too difficult. I don't think I have one now off the top of my mind.
Okay. Okay, sir. So I
But
thought
you can
like
try. You can try.
I'll try. Even if I try, sir, that question won't end from my end. So that's for sure. But if there is one question that you would like to, for the audience to ponder about, like something which you know unique about space, which you got to know unique, or which is something very different, which we as a ordinary people don't know about universe. So what is that question, or what is that thing you would like to say?
I don't know. Let me just from my experience about the things which are ignored or let's say least known about space. There are several things. Yes, there are many prejudices or preconceptions which are wrong, and in many occasions I've been really trying to explain why they're wrong. One of them is that well, it's very little known how hostile space is. Space is extremely hostile to human beings, but also to machines. When I say this, lots of people think that machines, you build a toaster and then you can put it on a rocket, fly it in space, and it will still toast bread. Well, this is not true. Nothing that you do on Earth, no machine that you build on Earth can be guaranteed to work in space. You have to develop special materials. You have to develop special systems to protect it from the thermal environment, from the vacuum, from the absence of gravity. Things that work in gravity, not necessarily working in well, it's not absence of gravity, but it's where the gravity is not let's say counterbalanced, but your velocity. So it's this is one preconception that people uh, yeah, don't have clear in mind that to go to space, you have to build very special machines. And this is why still now we have failures in space because we are still learning. Whatever we build on Earth cannot be by default used in space. We have to build a version of it that can be used in space. And we spent decades learning how hostile space could be. Of course, space is very hostile on human beings. These people understand this a bit more. But again, they think about the fact that you need air, and you say, good, I put a spacesuit around and I have the air. Well, that's a simplistic view, of course, because the lack of gravity has problems with your body, even with the machine that protects you in the suit. You have to think of processes that actually overcome the problems created by the fact that there is no gravity. So there is radiation that damages your tissues. So uh, we have a sort of romantic view of space from the films and so on, and you see people floating in microgravity, and you think everything is wonderful. These people, or even normal astronauts, even trained astronauts, spend most of their time vomiting. Yeah, they don't enjoy very much the environmental space. So that's one prejudice that certainly I would like to, well, I try always to eliminate. And the second one is more related to my job, which is space operations. Space operations are not very well known. People generally think that you launch, they see the rocket lifting off, disappearing into the clouds, and they think, okay, this is launched, the machine goes by itself, and then when it comes to the target, makes pictures and sends back data, and the mission is done. Well, uh, I try to explain that anything that the spacecraft does has to be controlled from ground. The spacecraft has to be told every single little thing, and even taking a picture in space is much more complicated than taking a picture with your camera or with your mobile phone. Everything has to be pre-programmed, has to be told to the spacecraft, has to be transmitted via across maybe hundreds of millions of kilometers. And so anything you do in space is extremely complicated. Spacecraft need to be continuously monitored and yeah, controlled. And yeah, nothing happens by itself in space.
Wow, wow, that's literally enlightened me. And when I got the craze for space science, I used to look at the sky and I say, it's so cool to go there. But when you said today, of course, it's not that cool after that, after the particular boundary. So yes, that's so glad to know over here. So I would like to ask one last question. After that, we have a special rapid fire round for you, sir. This or that. So before that, over these years, of course, uh, as you said, you have retired right now, but you are still involved in many things. How do you keep that curiosity, the hunger still alive at this particular moment, and you move on with with on the life, and you say, yes, I did what I wanted in my life. So what's that?
So, in terms of how to keep curiosity alive, that's a matter of personal attitude. I think that if you have developed this as a child, then it never leaves you. I was lucky to be born in a time when, yeah, the overall world was thinking very positive. A big war in Europe was over. I was born only 14 years after, so it was still very heavily felt. The generation of my parents had lived that war, and now the fact that it was sort of solid peace was very positive. Technology was developing, so progress was considered only positive. So for me, being positive oriented and yeah, scientifically curious on everything that happens around me was in a way relatively easy to develop in that environment, and this stays with you the whole of your life. So this is, and also then you get a scientific education. If a scientist is not curious, then who else could be? So that's not difficult. More difficult is to keep abreast of the changes which are happening. Space and technology are changing very rapidly. And of course, if you are not anymore in an active career, then it's a continuous and conscious effort to keep your information flowing and avoiding that you apply say judgment which is based on information that was valid when you were still working. You have to adapt your mind to the new world. This is more difficult. It's not easy. It's not easy for an old man, but it's not easy for anybody. So that's certainly an effort, which actually keeps me in a way. The two things are connected because I'm curious and I learn, and from the things I learn, I get more curiosity. So that's in a way two things that are related to each other.
Yeah, that can be felt. As I asked you about that question, you ask every question, how did this happen actually? So that keeps the curiosity alive and comes within. So hope so our viewers would also do that, sir, and will be always curious, always ready to learn. And with that, I start on with the rapid fire round, a small round for you. This either
Okay.
this or that. So if you have other opinion also, that's also welcome. We would love to hear that. The first question which I would like to ask you for this is, in the ESA room, or the after the this Rosetta mission, would you be likely to be known as smartest in the room or the most inspiring leader in the room?
Definitely the most inspiring.
That's
Well, so first of all, I know very well that I wasn't the smartest, but it was my ambition to be inspiring. So if I were to choose, I would prefer to be known as the most inspiring.
and I guess you have done that, sir, already. Then a 10 minutes walk or a 10 minutes of nap to reset your focus.
10 minutes walk.
Great.
Yes.
If not space operation expert, what you would have been?
Oh, interesting. Um, you will laugh. I would have always loved to sing in a musical.
Wow. Actually, I won't laugh at it, sir. That's your opinion, and that's so good to hear that you have that interest. So still you
But
pursue that?
but no, 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 no. I never pursue it, and it's getting worse when I'm older. But But I would have always loved to do that. Yeah, I've given up, but yeah, you can't do everything.
Okay. Uh, the word you have said most often in your mission control.
uh, Difficult to say. The word I've said most. Relax. This happened, let's say, not in the beginning of my career, but in the when you grow up with experience, you take a role which is the role of a flight director, and there you are confronted with very emotional situations where things seem to be wrong, go wrong, and accumulate, and uh, and it's your job to take the decision on how to get out of it. But you cannot do it on your own. You need your team. And your team is made of very young people, and these young people are very emotional. And for me, it was important to try and control the emotions of these people such that I would get the information I needed to take the right decision. I didn't have enough knowledge on my own. So I'm now using the word relax to say that it was very often my role to try and put order in the mental process of very bright young people, but who were under a very strong, very huge emotional pressure. And I could have a different view because I was more experienced, I was older, I was more detached, but I needed them, and therefore, yeah, I summarize it with relax. It was putting order in their mental process.
Wow. Actually, yes, that's true. Young people requires this word, sir. Relax. Okay. The next question: what do you miss most about the mission control room?
The mission control room. Let's say
Oh, yeah.
the best part of my job was always been being in the control room. The more I grew in my career, of course, I was less exposed to it. But you can ask all my colleagues, whenever I had a minute, I would go down. In the mission control room, you feel, you get really the atmosphere. You learn. It's the only place where you really learn what happens. And you get a direct feeling of what's going on, whether there's something wrong, the gravity of any problem. They would call me for a problem, yeah, because I had to be informed. And I would not stay in my office and wait for a full report. I would go down, and there you get from the way people behave, from the way, well, the level of relaxation or the level of tension, from the smell in the room, you
Wow.
get a very direct feeling of what's going on. You get information that no report, no verbal or written report, no film, no picture, no drawing is capable of giving to you. So yeah, it's the atmosphere in the mission control room is difficult to describe, but it was definitely the best part in my job.
Wow, I think that's emotionally connected to you till now. And even if I can get a chance, I'll also do the same as you said. The mission control room would be my most valuable thing in my entire career. So with that, it was a wonderful rapid fire round, and I enjoyed personally your answers very much, sir. We got to know much more about you, which is like kind of you didn't tell to others, maybe or maybe not. So, thank you so much for joining us today, sir. It was an honor to speak to you. I felt inspired, and of course, the viewers who are watching this will feel the same, start their curiosity once more, and will be motivated forever. Thank you so much for your time, sir.
Thank you for inviting me, and good luck for the future.
Thank you so much, sir.